Okay, this lesson we're going to learn how to factor expressions using the greatest common factor. So first of all, what is factoring? Well, it's dividing. And what we usually do when we factor two expressions is we break it down into two new expressions that when you multiply those expressions together, you get back the original. All right, so here are some examples like the factors of 15. We can do 5 times 3. We could have done 1 times 15. Over here, if we were to factor this, we think of two things that when you multiply them together get us the original. And then finally, we get something like this. You know, if we factor this, and we get something like this, and that'll be explained how we do this in the next lesson. But for right now, we're going to focus on the greatest common factor. Okay, so the greatest common factor. So if you take two numbers like 12 and 20, both of these numbers can be divided by 1, by 2, by 4, and so the greatest of those numbers is 4. So we call 4 the greatest common factor. So I want you to take a look at these two terms below and see what the greatest common factor is between the two of them. That means what can you divide both of these terms by? What is the largest thing that you can divide both of them by? So press pause and try to find your own answer, and when you're ready, go ahead and hit play again. Okay, so quickly you should have been able to see that 5, you can divide both of these terms by 5. You might not have been able to see that right away you can divide both of these terms by x. Well, why can't you divide by x squared? Well, if I divide this by x squared, that's no problem. X squared divided by x squared is just 1. All right. Well, what happens if I divide this by x squared? Well, x divided by x squared, I have 1x, and I'm trying to take away 2 x's from it, and that doesn't work. So actually, the greatest common factor, well, I can divide both the numbers by 5. I can divide both of these terms by x, and that's it. I can't divide both terms by y. So our greatest common factor is 5x. Okay, you can do it by 5, you can do it by x, but the greatest is to do both of those, 5x. Okay, so let's try one. All right, here we go. I have two terms here. I have 5x squared plus 15xy. And what I want to do is I want to try to find the greatest common factor between these two terms. We just saw that it's 5x. Now, to complete the factoring problem, what we're going to do is we're going to take what remains after we're done dividing these. So if I divide each term by 5x, so I'm going to divide that by 5x, and what do I get left over? Well, 5 divided by 5 is 1x squared. That means I have 2 x's on the top, and if I divide by 1x, that means one of these x's cancels out with one of these x's. That leaves 1x left over. All right, so that means what's left over after I divide this first term by 5x is just an x. What happens when I divide this term by 5x? Well, 15 divided by 5 is 3. That should be a 3. Yeah, that stinks. Alright, I'll have to fix that later. So that should be a 3, and then the x's cancel out. All I have left over is y, so this should be x plus 3y. So we take the greatest common factor, we put it out in front of the parentheses, and then whatever is left over after we're done dividing goes inside of the parentheses. So this should be our final answer. So now I would like you to try these problems on your own. So press pause, try the problems on your own. When you're ready to check your answer, go ahead and press play. All right, in this first example, there's no number here that I can divide by. So I'm not going to be able to divide both of these by any number but 1. Both of these have an x. This one has an x squared, this one has an x. The most that I can take out of both of them is just 1. So it's always the lower of the two. So I can divide this by x, I can divide this by x. Right? I can't divide this by x squared. Right? It wouldn't help us out. Now I can divide both of these by y squared, and I can divide both of these by z. So that makes the greatest common factor x, y squared, z. Okay, so that's the greatest common factor that goes out in front of the parentheses. What remains after I divide by x, y squared, z? Well, x, y squared, z. Well, the x, this one x cancels out one of these x's. All right, because there's two of them here. So that leaves one x left over. So there's that. The y squareds cancel out with the y squareds. The z's cancel out with the z's. All right, over here, same thing. The x's cancel out. The y squareds cancel out. And that leaves whatever z cubed divided by z is just z squared. So this is our final answer. This is the answer of our factoring problem. I went ahead and showed this answer down here as well. You can divide all the numbers by 3. You can divide every term by a. And since this term doesn't have a b, you can't divide it by b. So the greatest common factor is 3a. This is what you get when you're left over after you divide each of these terms by 3a. So this would be the final answer here. Okay. That's it for this. Go ahead and try the example problems that were given to you, the practice problems, the homework, and wish you luck.